Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one more session of Address. As you know, we have been handling several sessions, and this is one more interesting session. Here, we are talking about a new breakthrough technology, that is the blockchain or Web3 applications and digital currency. Now, these are several hi-fi words and vocabulary which sometimes I use to sound as if I'm educated, but even I don't understand everything. So let's talk to an expert who can help us understand these and see how this ties to the legal profession. We have with us Mr. Dhrupad. Mr. Dhrupad, welcome and thank you for sparing the time to talk with us. I would like to take a minute or so to just read your brief profile and then we'll get into the discussion. So, for our viewers' purpose, Mr. Dhrupad Das, he's been an active part of Web3 and blockchain space since 2017. He's a corporate litigator with more than 15 years experience in the northeastern states and Delhi. He's also a founding partner of Panda Law. Panda, that's an interesting animal, but I think there must be some story behind that. And his domain focus is this technology and law. He's also co-founder of Colors of India, which is India's largest community of Web3 artists. That's something which I would like to know more about. He's also an advisor to Web3 Assam, which is a Web3 community growing grassroots adoption of the blockchain in northeast of India. So with that, let's start with a first basic question. Mr. Drupal, let's forget what blockchain or Web3 or this digital currency are. But how do I use that for my legal aspects? How can I further my legal profession or any benefit that I can draw from this? Let's start with that before we understand and get into the technologies.
So I will break it up into two parts. One is how to do business with blockchain, right? And as lawyers, we often have to advise clients on how to conduct their business and how to enter into various contractual relationships. Now, it is my belief that as we progress into this new era of emerging technologies, and I may be allowed to say that emerging technologies are coming faster than they've ever had, right? So a lot of those technologies, I believe, be that AI, be that VR, whichever technology we mentioned.
You need to slow down a little bit. I understand the word VR, but not everybody may. So,
right?
can you explain what VR means?
So, virtual reality, augmented reality. Now, there's also XR, which is experience reality. So, different ways of perceiving reality. And these are just some technologies that are coming. So, I believe that a lot of these technologies would be mediated by blockchain. So simply put, it is important for us to understand blockchain as lawyers so that we are able to design their contractual relationships. So there is a field of blockchain which is called tokenomics. We can go into a bit, but token and economics, the economics of a token. So I think lawyers have a large role to play there. So that's on one side. That's on, let's say, on the transactional side. Then we can break it down, come down to the dispute resolution side. And today we are well aware that there are disputes aplenty, right? And many of these disputes arise in a very traditional setting. And I may be allowed to air a slightly unconventional thought, which is maybe blockchain is not appropriate for these ecosystems. So blockchain may actually be, there is a saying that blockchain is a solution looking for a problem. So it is maybe not always that blockchain is used or useful for a traditional dispute resolution system, because the cost of implementing the blockchain may outstretch the entire process of justice delivery, and the ease of using blockchain solutions may also be a barrier to entry for many. But with that being said, I believe that traditional legal systems, legal dispute resolution systems only apply to offline disputes that are not taking place on the internet. Now, when you look at the internet, you will find disputes that are what I would call on-chain and off-chain, meaning that a dispute that originates on the blockchain, because blockchain is now enabling a lot of processes. So any dispute that originates on the blockchain will, by definition, require a blockchain-based dispute resolution system. Whereas a lot of online disputes that may not be blockchain based. So let's say something to do with your LinkedIn accounts or Amazon, Flipkart, something like that, where you're on a platform or you're interacting with intermediaries, may also benefit from a blockchain based system. So ultimately, we are at a stage where the technology is not fully fleshed out, it's growing day by day, and the problems that it is throwing up is also growing day by day. So depending on both these conditions, I would say that we are at the observe and interact stage of blockchain in law.
So there's a joke that Yogi Bear, which is a famous cartoon in US, it says that when you come across a fork in a road, take it. I mean, without telling which fork to take, right or left. So
Absolutely.
let me share a few things of my experience with blockchain, or in fact, let me even step back and say virtual reality.
Hmm.
More than 22 years ago, I participated in a research project where I was sitting in a car in a laboratory which was connected to 8 or 10 different computers. And I had to start the car and change the gear and then step on the accelerator. And I got the feeling as if I was moving. The screens, it had about 8 or 10 screens giving me the peripheral view and frontal view, everything, that I was actually driving a car. It was very realistic. And my friends back there who were in the research seat, they then gave me a brake failure.
Hmm.
And then they put a drunken driver car in front of me. On top of that, I was able to manage the car,
Hmm.
but on top of that, they gave me a bad thunderstorm. So eventually, I went and crashed. Of course, I was just sitting in the position, but that's what happened, and then the experiment ended. Of course, the rest of the things are story, but that's my first experience with virtual reality, where I was actually sitting in a physical car. So it was a real car with everything, except it was not on the road. And that was 21, 22 years ago. So
Wow.
having said that, then I'll talk about this blockchain, not necessarily the same blockchain which you are talking about, but a similar feature of that, where there was a project going on. This was in the US at that time with a multidisciplinary national departments where a specific institute was coordinating. So this institute, being the project management lead, was updating all the documents real time onto their website. So whatever I did today, it would be on the website. Of course, that website was username and password protected. So only these organizations had the access to that. So if I made a mistake, I would correct it tomorrow. And you would be able to see first my thought process, how I started off something, and then I made a mistake, then corrected it. So all this was live and real time, and people appreciated it. So in blockchain, one of the benefits is that, especially in dispute mechanism, is about the authenticity of a document.
Correct.
See, if I have a document in my computer, or it could be sitting on an email server like Gmail or something, you may not believe this, or maybe you would, but others may not believe. But it is possible to even edit those emails to a certain extent, because Google has a very high security, so it's not that easy as your Outlook or something which is sitting on your computer where you can manipulate. But it is possible to go and manipulate certain emails even in Gmail. And end of the day, you're giving a digital certificate for the electronic evidence under 65B. All that is fine. But what you have already manipulated it. Even the metadata in the emails, you can manipulate. Of course, the next step of that is the forensic analysis where you try to identify that. But because that email is in only one location, I'm able to modify. But what if this email is in 1,000 computers, or a million computers, or 100 million, or 100 billion computers? Even with a virus attack, I don't think I'll be able to reach each and every document, every computer. So my document, which is real time, let's say a daily progress report or a monthly progress report or an incident report, whatever it is, it's now on the internet, authenticated by blockchain as having been a contemporary document, that happened on that particular date. And there is no need for anybody to check its authenticity, because you cannot fake it, you cannot modify it, you cannot anyway meddle with it. So that I think is the biggest advantage of blockchain. And can I have your thoughts on that? On how blockchain can help us not just preserving evidence. Let's start with that. Maybe we can get into other aspects later.
So I'll answer it in this way, that what you are talking about is the attestation quality of blockchain. So blockchain can actually attest to a lot of states as having taken place in a particular state of a particular place or even time. So the geolocation of where a particular incident took place and what exactly took place can be attested on the blockchain. And this use case is being mainly played out in the supply chain industry. That is where you will actually see a lot of it, because in the supply chain a particular good can change hands at various points, and it is usually in these exchanges where all disputes in the supply chain arise. Somebody mistagged a particular document, or or a package, or a entire container in some cases can be mislabeled, and consequences ensue. So now with the advent of blockchain, if a particular object is tracked through and through this entire system, then it's very easy to identify where the fault lies. And that can solution to that fault can also be automated. The technical word people will use as a smart contract, but it is actually an automation. Right? They will automate that if this fault is attributable to X party, then Y party will be compensated in Z manner. So that chain can be completed. So that is, I think, a very useful case. And I also believe that if hashes, like essentially on the blockchain, storing data in text form is convenient, but in pictorial form or in other sort of files can become cumbersome. And usually blockchains then have to refer to other parties or third parties to actually start storing that data, which is where again issues can come. So, but that being said, if there are pivotal agreements or there are pivotal documents to which a dispute may arise, and you want to have certainty beyond doubt that this took place in this manner between these individuals, then yes, I think blockchain is absolutely an important way to prove that fact. So the quality you'll again use is attestation, so that this fact gets attested, and then you'll need a modification in laws to accept certain blockchains as being facts. So so the disputes regarding that become very difficult, and whoever is going against it will then have to establish how the blockchain was spoofed, which the blockchain qualities being such, and we can go into that a bit, is quite immutable. So it's very difficult to spoof a blockchain without leaving trace of this.
As of now,
As of now, with quantum computers, I think that is under risk.
yes. So blockchain, I think the half the answer lies there. Chain. It's a chain of computers, which, as partly what I was stating and you have supported, it's a chain of computers storing your data, which serves in authenticating your document. Fair enough. What other advantages do we have with blockchain?
So let me just explain in my own simple way what I think a blockchain is, right? So I'll give you what my definition is, and then I'll try to give an example to make it intuitive for a person to understand. So a blockchain is at its very core a digital ledger.
Digital
Ledger, a khata,
ledger.
the digital ledger,
Okay.
right? In computer science, it's also a more advanced version of a database, right? So, and database is nothing else where data comes in and data goes out. That's all. Now, a blockchain is a reduced database where its only function is to operate as a ledger, entry and exit, credit and debit. That's all. So that's quite simple. And that's a bit like a spreadsheet, you can say. But now imagine that this Excel file or the spreadsheet is shared amongst a network of computers. And in a sense, internet is just that, a network of computers. Anybody who has used torrents, file sharing, legally or illegally as the case may be, they would be aware of what a network of computers can do, right? So it's a network of computers which collaboratively shares the entire ledger in each of their node. That will be the technical word. So each node will store that entire ledger, and so that if half the ledgers go out or half the nodes get destroyed for any reason, calamity or otherwise, then at least it can still be seeded back. So that is in a sense what a blockchain is and how it operates. Now this network is always said to be decentralized because it is not controlled by any one party, and it is in all geographical locations. In fact, Bitcoin, the blockchain for Bitcoin is now even in space. So if Earth gets destroyed, then it is theoretically possible to seed it back from that one that's in a satellite being updated, right? So it's now theoretic, it's practically possible for us to do it. So if tomorrow we want to think of financial system, then I would be a lot more comfortable with a financial system that is safe from even galactic problems. So and now every entry in this ledger is called a block, right? And each entry is linked to each other, thus the blockchain. And this linking actually stamps the chronological order in how the linking is taken place. So another way to imagine it is, imagine you are writing in a notebook and multiple people can write in this notebook, and new pages are automatically being generated for every person to write. But everybody has to write in a sequence. No two people can write at the same time. And each note has a reference to the previous note. So since each note is self-referencing the previous note, it creates a chain. So that if you ever alter any note in that scheme of things, then automatically the whole chain is going to get disturbed. So the trick, the magic of blockchain was actually just self-reference, the ability to encode the previous transaction in the current transaction. And that is the linking that takes place that changes all transactions.
Okay, I think it's getting too technical now, maybe. But now you also went into Star Wars. So
Yes.
what should I say? Force be with you?
Yes, I will accept that.
All right. But let's come back to Earth and talk about what is Web3. I mean, is it like a 3G or a 4G, or is it just some other technology? What is Web3?
So Web3 is a marketing term. Let's
Okay.
start with that. Web3 is a marketing term that is mainly used to explain to customers, potential customers rather, and sometimes investors and even policy people, what a suitcase full of technologies are trying to achieve. Because now what's happening is that every technology is working in combination with each other, and we are getting a combinatorial effect. So that is what Web3 actually is, a marketing term. But now, what is this marketing term? What is being conveyed through this term is this: Web 1 was the form of the avatar of the internet where we could only read what was on the internet.
That is a static
Not
website.
static websites. Absolutely correct. You can only read it as a glorified newspaper, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how I actually made my projects when I was in school. I would download photographs, I'll read it like a, alternative to the Britannica Encyclopedia. That was my use case. Then somewhere when I started entering college, Web 2 started happening. The trigger for that was JavaScript. I think that's a tech that most people are familiar with. And JavaScript allowed all of us to become contributors onto the internet.
Dynamic web pages.
Absolutely correct. So we were now able to populate Facebooks and Googles and Amazons. So they did not make any content themselves. It's we who put the content there. So Web 1 was read, Web 2 was read and write. So functionalities are being added. Now Web 3 adds another functionality, which is the functionality of ownership of digital assets. So that is quite profound, I feel, because it ushers in a new asset class that everybody will now hopefully own and benefit from. Governments will have to regulate, businesses will create and work with. So it is going to spur a lot of innovation. It's going to be a multi-trillion dollar industry. I have no doubt about that. And in a most basic sense, it is this ownership that is now possible on the internet. That is profound. So
So,
that
if,
is Web3.
since you said ownership, that leads me to the next topic, which is digital currency. So, digital currency, what is that exactly? I mean, how do I make money on the internet
Okay.
digitally?
So I will give a simple answer because the complicated answer requires me to go into economics, computer science, and game theory. Right? Simple answer is this: that digital currency is nothing else but an IOU from I won't call it a software. I'll call it a protocol. So it's a technical distinction, but it's an IOU from a protocol that allows me to add or subtract from a ledger maintained on this protocol. So mouthful. So let me break that down. So what happens is that we'll take the king of the class, which is Bitcoin, right? So ultimately, if I have purchased the Bitcoin from, let's say, an exchange, there are many exchanges in India today and abroad. I can
So I'm
use,
going to stop you right there, which means that I can actually pay currency, my money,
yes,
and buy
through UPI.
bitcoins.
Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay. And I can do
Correct.
the reverse also. So I could sell the
Absolutely.
bitcoin and take money.
We will call it an on ramp and an off ramp. That is the
And
jargon that we
off,
use. Ramp, on ramp, and
on
off.
ramp and off ramp. Okay, so everything is changing. Mouse was earlier something an animal creeping
Yes,
houses. Now it's become the on the computer. Now you're saying
yes,
on ramp is something which we get onto a expressway or a flyover, and the
or
down
it,
ramp is something where we come down. But now that's coming into the digital currency.
absolutely
Great.
correct. So we would say that on ramp is taking you on to a digital marketplace or a digital ecosystem. So it's a ramp into that, because without Bitcoin or without the tokens that blockchains require, you cannot even access the marketplace. You will have to look at it from outside as an intellectual or an enthusiast, but you can't interact with it. So let's assume now, coming back to our example, that I use my UPI and I purchase some Bitcoin, right? Now, this will first stay with the exchange who will hold custody, but it essentially I can very easily withdraw it into my own wallet as well. I can download a wallet online, store it over there, and now it means that I own this. It is in my custody. If I've stored it on my computer, then it's on my computer. If my computer goes, then my bitcoins go, gets destroyed, and a large portion of bitcoins have disappeared in this fashion, and I'm sure it's continuing to happen as we speak. So so now what happens is that having access to the bitcoin is essentially nothing else but having access to a private key, and private key is a fancy word for a password to what, one might ask. So it's a password to the ledger.
Kulja
So
o sesame.
huh?
I said Kulja o sesame.
Exactly, exactly. So with that private key I can access the ledger and I can move coins out. That's it. Or I can receive coins. That's
Okay.
it.
That's great.
So
So now getting into one legal aspect, we are reaching the end of our time. So is there any law that controls this blockchain, Web3, and the digital currency in India?
so I will break it up into a framework that I usually apply to my clients who come into this space, and that is the triple IDC framework. Right. So there are 5 laws that do apply, and they apply in varying degrees, and it is often for the projects or the enthusiasts to understand where they stand. Triple IDC stands for income tax, information technology, intellectual property, data protection, and their suite of corporate laws. These do absolutely apply. Just to touch upon it a little bit, income tax has been the most modified. The government has introduced the concept of a virtual digital asset, and they have taxed it, even though that does not make it legal. That's what they keep saying, but it's not made illegal either. But it now at least allows people to interact with virtual digital assets in a legal and compliant manner. That's very good for users like you and me who want to maybe just buy and sell or maybe buy and hold, right? So government takes a fair share of taxes from there. The second part of it is information technology. That is, if you're a product builder or if you're a platform, then you need to look at that. Intellectual property mainly for creatives or again people who are building it. Data protection is very common. With data protection, I will also add security and cybersecurity risks and stuff like that. One needs to be mindful of. And the last one is corporate laws, where the Companies Act has in fact been amended. Schedule 3 of the Companies Act has been amended to bring in the concept of digital assets or virtual currency, they call it there, so that a company can actually hold it as a stock and trade or as a capital asset if it so chooses. So the framework is being put in place.
Okay, so there's no specific one law, but there's a combination of laws which and support these
So
technologies.
I would hazard a guess, and I would say that your laws in this field will come from 3 places. Number one, the most highly touted is international law. So you are going to the G20 was a good example of that, where India actually put out a paper saying it's seeking out intention, its intention of how it seeks the regulations to flow. And it has actually pointed out that the regulation should keep in mind emerging markets. That's the key, that's the beauty of what India has done there. So, and it says that, listen, now everybody, all rules cannot be West focused, it has to keep emerging markets in place. And the general consensus internationally is three things. Number one, we don't want you to launder money, we don't want you to fund terrorists or evade sanctions. So that's part one. Part two is, please do not scam. Be very careful, don't scam, customers are suffering. That's part two of it. And part three is, don't compete with the sovereign currencies. Please don't do it.
Okay.
We have a legal tender, it's called the rupee, please stick to it. And this is actually where a lot of confusion and heartburn was created, because Bitcoin is actually a P2P currency. It is seeking to replace these currencies. So the very fact that there is a currency that's opposing the Indian rupee is cause for some concern. And one will remember in history that the Germans literally tried to break the sterling in the Second World War. So there was a currency war going on, because if you can break a currency, you can break a nation. So these are the things that one should keep in mind. On the second level, I think India is going to come up with some regulations to kind of ensure that its people are not leaving. So there's a brain drain taking place right now. Many clients have actually left. Many of my clients have left India and they're positioned outside Singapore and Switzerland and Dubai being the main places, because they're finding this is not a clear, there's uncertainty here. So there's a regulatory arbitrage that's at play. And the third part is state level, where my local government here in Assam is contemplating bringing in NFTs, non-fungible tokens. It's a type of token for it's, let's put it this way, it's trying to use blockchain to protect GI goods, to give faith to, so that a customer has trust in the fact that the good that they're buying is actually from the village, which is GI protected. Hyderabad and others are also at the forefront, where they've set up sandboxes for experimenting. Land records are coming online. So these use cases are coming from the state. So I think at all three layers, we will see some form of regulation coming, but mass adoption will only happen when all three line up and work in synchrony.
So I think you have already answered my potential next question. That would have been, are there any international laws? And you already said that people are going to Singapore or Switzerland. So which means that some other countries have laws in place.
They do.
Fair
Very
enough.
advanced laws, in fact, and very positive. In fact, I would like to point out the example of a place called Zug. So Zug is a canton, it's like a state or a district. I'm not sure how they define it. But over there, they have actually allowed payment of municipal taxes in Bitcoin. They are giving it the stature of legal tender.
Okay.
So, so that enables a whole set of use cases, and it tells builders and creators and founders that this is a positive ecosystem for your environment for you. So that's why you see a lot of migration there. So they've built entire townships based on this.
Now, one question has been bugging me for some time, and I'm not able to recall the name, but I think it was in the year 2002 or 2001, actually 2001 ending. There was a platform or a software in the US which people used to exchange files. In fact, it was used worldwide, where I could download files from your computer and you could download from my computer. These were songs and audio and video files mostly. And the US court finally shut it down. And the last 1 or 2 weeks, the number of users had jumped like 10 times. It started something like
Napster.
Napster.com. That was the name.
Napster, yeah.
Napster.com. Thanks. I'm saying the name again probably after more than 20 years. So had to
Yeah.
remember. So great.
Yeah.
Yes. Napster.com was, or at least it was, a legal case which prohibited something like this blockchain. But I think again, things may have changed in the last 20 years or more.
So the difference is this: blockchain is only maintaining a ledger, whereas Napster was allowing file sharing illegal. So the reason it got shut down was because of violation of intellectual property rights. That is how they did it. But in a case of a blockchain which is not violating any of these rights, so it's actually fairly straightforward there. Even though I may caveat it by saying that one offshoot of blockchain is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, And that is an area where many people have infringed a lot of rights. So, and to bring it back to what I said about the law and blockchain and how the two interact, in that case, one would have to go to a traditional court, get a traditional injunction to say that this person on Web3 is violating my rights.
Error, unable to process your command. So, and the judge would be saying, how can I convince this computer?
Exactly.
So,
No, but now fortunately, many blockchains are putting in protocols in place that allow for compliance with court orders, and slowly they will also, I think, bring into place where a lot of this gets automated. I mean, fingers crossed. These are early days.
sure.
We'll see how it evolves.
I think we touched about everything from Star Wars to some of the basic things. So that was a wonderful session, and it was probably longer than I anticipated, but time just passed by. I think we are in some kind of a time zone where time moves faster than the other
Yes,
areas.
and when is engaged, the time moves faster. Absolutely.
It was very engaging and very thought provoking. New technologies and the way things have evolved. Sometimes it's scary, but that is how change is.
Absolutely.
So once again, I thank you for your time. This was interesting, and personally, I would like to interact with you some more, maybe gain some more knowledge, and then until that time, so see
Thank
you.
you so much, sir. Thank you so much.